We will now discuss the variables that influence the lexical access. The process of accessing or retrieving lexical information is mostly influenced by a number of factors. These factors include word frequency, morphological complexity, semantic or syntactic issues. So now we will look at all these variables and try to determine how they influence the very process of lexical information or retrieval of lexical information. The first and foremost is the word frequency. Now, under the word frequency, we need to understand that the role of word frequency has been closely connected to the phoneme monitoring study. Now, this was the study which was done by Foss 1969. Now, in the study, what they did is that the participants listened to continuous speech passage and do two things. One is comprehending the passage and then listening for target phoneme such as b. In some instances, the target phoneme followed a high frequency word. In other instances, it followed low frequency word. The results were very clear that monitoring times increased slightly after low frequency words. So these phonological variables were taken into account when they were checking the word frequency, and this was made possible by connecting to the phoneme monitoring that was conducted in the study by Foss. The other one is the syntactic category. Now, in order to understand how syntactic category influence or is an influential variable, we need to understand that it deals with the sentence constituents and their further categories. So when we look at the sentence constituents, we look at the structural units of sentence. We have to take into account the fact that sentences are not a random string of words. They are words which are grouped into smaller structural units. And those smaller structural units include noun, determinants, and verbs. Syntactic rules determine the order of words in a sentence and how the words are grouped. For example, the natural groupings of sentences are called phrases, such as the child found the puppy in the garden. So, in which the child and then found the puppy and in the garden. So, they are the independent phrases. Now, each constituent has specific syntactic function in the sentence. The syntactic module accounts for structure of constituents and their relationship. In this case, for example, the child found the puppy in the garden. You will see the child, which is the agent of verb action, the puppy, which is the recipient of verb action, so subject and object. Now, these are the constituents and have specific syntactic function. Now, the syntactic categories include content verb, nouns, adjectives, prepositions, adverbials, major classes of verbs, transitive verbs, intransitive verbs, adverbs, function words such as pronouns, prepositions, determinants, verbal auxiliaries, and degree words, etc. So these constitute the syntactic categories. Then another variable that also influences the lexical access is the morphological complexity. With regard to morphological complexity, we have seen that words carry specific morphemes and every morpheme conveys specific meaning. So this is important that in order to retrieve, adequate or appropriate lexicon we must know that how those morphemes can be joined together to convey the meaning. A single morpheme word would be accessed directly. A prefixed word, however, would go through an initial prefix stripping stage. Now, after prefix has been stripped, a search for the base word is then undertaken. If successful, the final stage compares the prefix and base words to see whether they are compatible or not. So basically stripping off the prefixes to see or to analyze the base word, and then looking at it in order to determine whether that can convey the intended meaning or not. The last but not the least is the semantic priming. Now, by semantic priming we mean that this is a priming that occurs when a word presented earlier activates another semantically related word. So this is important, that when a word activates semantically related word. Now the priming task consists of two phases. In the first phase we see priming stimulus is presented, and in the second is the second stimulus, which is the target, that is presented. Now, although this process is often automatic, priming can also be guided by the use of specific strategies to achieve a particular task goal. For example, one could prospectively generate a number of potential targets based on the prime, or retrospectively check whether the target is related to the previously displayed prime or not. So this can happen, and this by using specific strategies, and one of the strategies is looking at prospectively generating number of potential targets. Now, Heyman et al. In their research show that responses were faster to targets preceded by backward and symmetric associate primes compared to unrelated primes, regardless of dot pattern complexity or not. So with semantic priming, this is another factor that we have seen in terms of the variables that influence lexical access. To conclude, lexical access is influenced by a variety of factors, including the frequency of words, its phonological structure, morphological structure, the presence of semantically related words, and the existence of alternative meanings of the word.